Hello, this is Clayton Vance, and welcome to the Clayton Vance podcast, where we discuss the art and soul of architecture and help explain why the world looks the way it does. Today, our guest is Paul Monson, who is the director of architecture at the the Utah Valley University School of Architecture. And this is the third of a three-part episode where we're discussing the what, how, and why, or the what, the what, why, and how. I've been talking too long. I thought we need a longer break. We need to do this over again. Hello, this is Clayton Vance, and welcome to the Clayton Vance podcast, where we discuss the art and soul of architecture. Here is where we actually talk about why the world looks the way it does and help explain that. Today, our guest is Paul Monson, who is the director of the School of Architecture at Utah Valley University. And this is the third of a series of installments of a podcast where we're talking about the what, why, and how of traditional architecture, what they're teaching at Utah Valley University. And in this particular episode, we're really going to talk about the how. We're going to talk about the practical aspects of architecture, educational practicalities, what you can do better as a student, since we are all students. And in architecture, you are always a lifelong student because you can never know everything and you are always learning on a daily basis. And so what can we do as individuals to be better observers of our environment, and what can we do about that rather than just casual or passive observers? And so, Paul, once again, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Clayton. Good to be here.
You said in this one, you wanted to start off with a quote from Vitruvius. For anyone who doesn't know who Vitruvius was, I don't remember what his full name is, Marco Polo Vitruvius or something like that.
Yeah, he's from the Lego movie.
The Lego movie. The Master Builder. And that's real. Is he really the Lego movie?
Yes.
I haven't seen the Lego movie.
Oh my gosh, you've got to see the Lego movie. That's like the greatest historical reference in any animated film I love. Vitruvius is the hero, and he teaches the young apprentice how to be a master builder.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but that's just a joke. Vitruvius was an ancient guy. He was he lived in ancient Rome, and he wrote a treatise on architecture to the emperor. And it said, these are the rules of architecture. This is how architecture should be. And back in those days, architects did more than just buildings. They built they were more like engineers, building a lot of machines and things. So some of his books aren't really, as relevant for architects today. But some of them, the things he says are just timeless. It's amazing reading ancient writing and things that could just be written today, and they're still true. So I just want to start with this quote from him, where he talks about what the education of an architect should be. Mm-hmm. The architect should be equipped with knowledge of many branches of study and varied kinds of learning, for it is by his judgment that all work done by the other arts is put to the test. He should therefore be both intelligent and skillful with his hands. He ought to be a man of letters, a skillful draftsman, versed in geometry, knowledgeable in history, instructed in the principles of philosophy, somewhat acquainted with music, not ignorant of medicine, learned in the opinions of jurists, and familiar with astronomy and the theory of the heavens. So basically, an architect just needs to know everything. And you can read that and feel really overwhelmed. That's really daunting.
Yeah.
Especially if you went to public school like I did and came out of high school feeling like you didn't really know anything. And then get to college and just kind of in awe of everything that you need to know for whatever profession you're going into. And architects, because you're designing buildings for people in all kinds of businesses and for all kinds of purposes, you have to understand how the building is going to be used in order to design a competent building for it. And just in the design, the process of design, you need to understand geometry and proportion and why some things look better than others. There's rules of design. And so he spends most of his books talking about proportion and elements and the different classical orders and how to create a building that's appropriate and durable and beautiful.
So it sounds to me like if you are a high school student listening to this, you're like, where should I go to architecture school? And you're like, maybe I might consider Utah Valley University. I guess the real question is what are you interested in? And if the answer to that is everything, this might be the place for you.
What's great about architecture is that you can take it in so many directions, and you can find a place in the architecture profession that fits you. So a lot of our students have more of an artistic brain. They're very creative, and that's architecture. Other students have a much more logical, they're an engineering wired brain, and that's architecture too. You can go into architecture and just manage projects and not be drawing. You're just out in the project site, managing people, and that's a big part of architecture as well. So it requires a lot of skills, a variety of skills, soft skills, just like people skills, organization skills, besides the obvious designing of buildings and knowing how buildings are constructed.
Mm-hmm. The subject is so vast. It is a little bit complicated when you're thinking about all the questions about why does the world look the way it does, and it all starts at architecture school. That's where it begins, because in order to design, because typically around the planet, I think a lot of people, anyone in the U.S. can pretty much do a residence. It's like your 4-year-old could draw up a residence as long as an engineer engineers it,
stamps
it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like anyone can do a house. And that's why most houses look like they were designed by someone who didn't really fully know what they were doing. It's because
I think it's 2% of homes in the United States are designed by licensed architects.
Really?
98% are not.
Okay, everyone, that's something to think about. And the reality is, if they were designed by licensed architects, who knows if they'd even look any better? All depends on where the person went to school.
Yes, architects are trained in a certain way, but I think it does speak to the disconnect. There's a real disconnect between what architects are learning how to do, what they spend time doing, and the majority of buildings that you see around us.
Yeah, and so then the commercial buildings, the institutional buildings, the commercial buildings, and all of that, those are designed by licensed architects, and
for the most part, or engineers.
Yeah. And so that's where it all begins. It begins with the education of the architect.
Yeah.
What does that look like in today's world, and what are they missing in most schools, and what's the core mission of UVU, and how are you trying to, deliver a better product?
That's a big question. Yeah. I first encountered the problem of architectural education when I was looking for a grad school to go to. I was living with my wife in Chicago. I was doing residential construction, building stained glass windows, and thought, the architects are the ones that seem to really have all the fun. They get to design the things that I have to build. And that's what I want to do. I want to be an architect. So I did a lot of research. I traveled around the country and visited a lot of schools. They typically will do like an open house. So that's something that I would suggest if you're thinking about architecture school, is get out there and see what students are doing, see what these other schools are about. Because they're not all created equal. Just like you go to a doctor, don't just think that your doctor, because he has that title, is the greatest doctor. I went to a lot of schools, and some schools shocked me with how bad they seem. Like this is not a place where I want to study. It just seems like a dead end. There's not really thriving intellectual or interesting culture here. And others modernist schools mostly were really interesting. Like I went to some schools that just seemed to have a really cool program that I probably would have enjoyed. Ultimately, I decided to go to Notre Dame because it was the one classical school where not only were the ideals resonating with me, but I saw that for every one student that was graduating, there were like 3 firms that were trying to hire them. And I had a wife and a baby on the way, and I really wanted to have a job. I wanted to have a profession. And some schools that I went to, they would literally say, when you graduate, like, we don't have any resources to help you find a job. You're going to go through this period of depression where you realize that everything you learned in school is useless. This is their sales pitch.
Are you kidding me? I never did that. It's funny because I only applied to the University of Notre Dame in terms of architecture schools. The other schools were landscape design and landscape architecture. And so I never toured and had those experiences, really. So
because they don't care. They don't care that your education is practical. They are interested in their theories.
Okay.
And publishing for each other and drawing things for other architects. It's a very insular kind of navel-gazing activity. I did an internship in New York with Project for Public Spaces with a guy named Fred Kent, who I really admire. And he's just scathing in his critique of contemporary architects and how all they're caring about is awards and impressing each other. And there is that kind of insular sort of just echo chamber in a lot of these schools. And I was not interested in that at all. It's kind of, if that's what you want to do and you're just want to be in that kind of discussion and philosophy, then it's not the kind of architecture that I wanted to do. So Notre Dame was markedly different from other schools. The student work was hand-drawn. It was watercolor rendering, really beautiful, artistic ways of communicating architecture. And I also was really interested in cities, the problem of urbanism, walkable urbanism, and Notre Dame had an urbanism track as part of this degree to study urban design. And so that's why I chose Notre Dame. My senior thesis was, my thesis advisor was a guy named Tom Rajkovic, who was a great mentor for me. And he actually was very instrumental in establishing the whole curriculum of UVU, or of Notre Dame, and came out and visited UVU last year as a guest speaker. And a lot of our curriculum is based on what he did and others, Thomas Gordon Smith and others at Notre Dame created there, but also trying to fill some gaps that I felt were in my education at Notre Dame that we wanted to keep improving on what they had taught us.
So real quick, curriculum, anyone who's looking at going to school or if you've got a nephew or a niece or some grandkid, you're like, oh my gosh, they ought to go to architecture school.
Yeah.
Curriculum is a really interesting thing because what I discovered is I could only gain as much knowledge as the teachers really, that the instructors I was under, the professors, and wherever I was in schools, the quality of their knowledge kind of became the limitation of my learning. Mm-hmm. And curriculum seems to be one of these almost arbitrary things that you can just set up whatever curriculum you want. But I know there is an accreditation process within architectures. You have to teach very specific things. But when it comes to the aesthetics of what you teach, how do you select a curriculum to figure out, here's how we're going to teach the students XYZ aesthetics, how things look?
Yeah, I think if you're looking at going to school, you need to consider both. Mm-hmm. You need to consider the teachers and the curriculum. So you got to do some homework. And if you can find out who teaches there and read things that they've written, or look them up and watch podcasts they've done, or things that they've said. Get to know the teachers, and you can make a judgment about whether this person is deep and authentic. But curriculum also matters. So you mentioned accreditation. Just as a really practical note, there are different paths to getting a license in architecture.
Mm-hmm.
The quickest way is a 5-year bachelor's degree. It's called the B.Arch, a Bachelor's of Architecture. It's a professional degree. And then the other paths are a 4+2. So you do a 4-year undergraduate and a 2-year master's degree, both in architecture. Or what I did, which was the slowest route possible and most expensive, is get an undergraduate degree in something else. I did Japanese because I was fascinated with Japanese language and culture. And then do a 3-year master's program, which a lot of schools have.
Mm-hmm.
At UVU, we've chosen to start with a 5-year bachelor's degree. Eventually, we'll probably add some graduate degrees. But there is a set of criteria that you need to meet for your curriculum to be accredited. But it isn't prescriptive, like you have to teach this class and this class and this class and teach them in this way. It's just the results at the end. Students need to be able to know how to do this, and this. Understand how to integrate a building with its systems and understand the impact on the environment of the building and be able to design things competently and know history and theory and things like that. So it's a set of criteria that then a school will write a curriculum in order to meet that criteria. And maybe some schools are really heavy in the technical side. You do a lot of building systems and structures and things like that, and other curriculums are more heavy on the artistic side, or are very innovative and avant-garde in their approach to design. There are a few classical programs. Notre Dame is the most well-known. UVU, we have our program, which we just got the final accreditation visit this past semester, and we'll find out in April the final verdict of that. But everything looks good so far. We're on track to become accredited. So that would be the second accredited university in the state of Utah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think you do need to consider both curriculum and faculty, and that takes some homework.
Yeah.
To figure out the different schools, what they're about.
What questions even ask if you're just going out there trying to figure out what school to go to? Because I went and toured Notre Dame.
Yeah.
I had no clue what I was supposed to be asking.
Right.
I probably looked like a complete imbecile when I was like trying to figure out what graduate school to go to. I'm a student. I'm 18 years old, 17 years old. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with life. Like, architecture sounds interesting.
Yeah.
What would be some recommended questions that a student could begin thinking about and then ask if they do college visits?
Cost is a big one for a lot of people. My graduate school education was really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I wish there had been more options. That's biggest strengths of UVU. It's, if not the least expensive architecture degree in the country, it's very close. It's extremely affordable, which means that, at like $6,500 a year in tuition, like you can probably work part-time and cover that and not end up with a lot of student debt. I think that's really important to people these days, is the affordability of education. And there's a lot of hidden costs also in education, so be careful. The tuition is this. There's also a lot of fees and
Public housing and
the cost of living in that particular place.
Yeah.
I would look at student work. Most schools will publish like the past year's student work. And if you see yourself in that student work, I'm like, this is what I'm about. I like that.
Yeah.
If that resonates with you, that's part of it.
That's a good way to put it, because that reminds me when people come to me and ask about interior design, for instance. So if they hired me first and we do schematic design, we're doing a house, their personal residence, and they're still trying to decide on what interior designer to go with. And it's the same case when someone's hiring me, is like, go look at their portfolio. Number one, that's the first step. Look at the portfolio, see if it's a body of work that you could just you just feel yourself in and just put yourself in. It's like, man, if my house looked like that, that would be all I need. I'll hire that person. And then the next thing is just personality. Like, do the personalities jive with you? When you interview me, when you interview this particular interior designer, does it totally, can you see yourself getting along?
Yeah.
Because it's a 3-year relationship from inception to you're walking in the house. And it's the same thing with the college. You may not like all your professors, but there's going to be a relationship that you're going to build with these individuals. Yeah. And then the third for me is cost. And that's why I think both you and I ended up at Notre Dame, is because that had the body of work. And so in that order, in that hierarchy of choosing, it's like, I want whatever it is that they're delivering. Okay, so the cost is way more than it really should be, but I'm doing that.
Yeah, and if you can get both, you get the philosophy that you want at an affordable cost.
It's like,
one of our students called the UVU program a unicorn. It's like something that shouldn't exist. I'm like, this can't be real. But I take a lot of pride in being able to provide that world-class education in classical architecture to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
UVU is also open enrollment. So you don't even have to apply to get it. You have a high school diploma, you just sign up and you're a UVU student. So it breaks down all the barriers to entry that universities might have. And we really do strive for the highest of what's possible. My quote that I come back to a lot when it comes to like standards for education, it's attributed to Michelangelo, but there's no real evidence that he said it. I don't know. A quote that says the greater danger for most of us lies not in setting our aim too high and falling short, but in setting our aim too low and achieving our mark. Like, we are really aspirational with the program that we're creating at UVU, and try to give students the kinds of experiences and knowledge that they will need to thrive in the industry and become leaders. That includes international travel. So if you're visiting a university, I wouldn't be afraid to ask difficult questions like, how are you going to prepare me to succeed in this profession? What am I going to learn here? And hold them accountable for what they say, because you're paying money. You are the client, really.
Yeah.
And I tell our students that, like, you are the reason that I exist. So everything I'm doing is for you.
Yeah.
And we've created a lot of research opportunities, international travel opportunities. We bring in over 100 different professionals every year in different studios to give guest lectures and feedback to students so that they get a ton of different perspectives and understand what the profession is all about. And we try to teach them timeless principles of design that are going to prepare them to be industry ready and be master builders, like Vitruvius.
Yeah.
He was the master builder. Really, I mean, it's kind of a comedy, in the Lego movie, and a pun on using his name. But architects need to know how things are built.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be another thing we could talk about, is the practice and the theory of architecture. I think you need to know both.
Yeah. You said thrive, students be able to thrive. When you're looking at just various personalities of students as they've come through, what kind of, I mean, your own kid, he comes to you and says, hey, I want to go, I'm thinking about doing architecture school. Oh, are there certain personality traits or characteristics, talents, interest stuff that actually kind of sets you apart as someone who could actually thrive in architecture?
Yeah, I think there's kind of two different personality types that do really well. Either you are the artistic type or you're more of the engineering type, but you have to really care about how things go together and how to make stuff. You got to be really interested in making things, and especially at UVU, that we have a big emphasis on that, like understanding how things are put together and getting your hands dirty and building stuff. Very early on, we do plaster casts and we make a lot of models, and we have a wood shop. And that was something from my education at Notre Dame that I felt like was lacking a little bit. I wish that we could have built more models and actually constructed things a little bit more. There's so much that you need to learn as an architect, but the more you know how buildings are constructed, the more your drawings will make sense. Drawing these lines on paper. And that's actually, like, believe it or not, antithetical to the way it's taught at a lot of universities. There are universities you might go to that would say, like, the more you know about how it's constructed, like, the less I want you to design it that way, because I want you to innovate in ways that nobody's ever thought about, like unconstructable ways. That's the only way we know we're innovating, if it can't even be built. That's just some kind of idea. And
This is these aren't.
it becomes graphic design,
Yeah,
and not architecture.
And what we're talking about here, this is stuff. These are real things in the real world. That's how people really think. That's not like a joke.
Yeah,
That's
but it's not every school out there.
yeah, it's not every school,
So
but
that's why you got to do your homework. You got to visit these places and see, like, what their studios are like, because there's really strong modernist schools and there's really weak modernist schools out there.
yeah.
I went to a conference just a few weeks ago at the University of Arkansas, of all places, and was just blown away. This is a modernist school, but they have incredible resources. They just finished like a $60 million heavy timber framed innovation center where students can construct a 3-story building within their building. Like, and they're doing cool, really cool cutting edge stuff, and they have tons of resources. And you would never know that if you just looked at it on paper. A lot of schools have community engaged projects where you're working with real clients. That's something that we try to do every year at UVU. One of your studios at least has a real client, has a real community that you're working with and can impact. This past semester, my studio, the Urban Design Studio, we designed an entire neighborhood in Vineyard, Utah, which is the next 30 years. The UVU owns the property, and we're planning on building an integrated campus and neighborhood that's totally walkable and sustainable and all of those things. And students presented it to administration at the university. A couple of years ago, that same studio, we designed a new hospital for Intermountain Health, and had the chief medical officer and the CEO and the head of their facilities in their boardroom, and our students are presenting to them. So those are real world experiences that you may not get. Like, a lot of schools are just so theoretical. You're just presenting to your professor at the end, and of some building that will never get built and has no real world practicality to it. And then you graduate and you really don't feel as prepared for the real world.
I will give you kudos. I was able to attend that urbanism presentation that your studio did, and those two students who presented, the presentation was exceptional. The diagrams were unbelievably clear. It was one of the best student presentations I've ever seen. And the reality is that presentation was exactly the same presentation you would give to a planning commission meeting if you were the landowner doing the exact same thing that you're doing. And so had unbelievable practical application. And that seems to serve a way better purpose than just trying to theoretically come up with the next most amazing who knows what's technology to solve technology.
Yeah, and kind of graphics. It's so much is about graphics these days. It's just images without substance.
Yeah.
You need both. You need good graphics. You've got to be able to draw. Man, if you graduate from school and you can't draw, you have really done yourself a disservice. Most schools you go to, that would be another thing to look at, is like freshman studio. If everybody's on their, MacBook and just click, 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 making some images, digital images, and they're never learning how to draw with pencil and paper, I'd be really cautious about that, because you need those.
Why is drawing so important?
Hand drawing skills. I'm going to get on my soapbox.
Oh, here. Fall on the soapbox. Why drawing is important.
There is a brain and hand to paper connection. This tactile experience of drawing things and making things with your body that is more memorable. Like the learning will go deeper, and you'll be able to explore ideas in ways that computer programs don't let you do. So we want to have freedom. You want to have freedom as a designer. You want to have all the tools to make whatever you want to make. And digital tools will come with their own algorithms and functions that make certain things easy and certain things really difficult to do. I remember working with a first-year student, very first, studio, we're designing just a simple house, and the stair wasn't working with their floor plan, and it would have been really easy to solve if you just take the last few stairs and we just turn them. If you can just turn them like on a curve, which works in residential. You can't do it in commercial architecture to have a curving stair. But the student looked at me and said, I can't do that in Revit. But that's the solution. It would be beautiful if that stair just came down and instead of landing where it is.
You can draw it pretty easy.
So that student had become a software operator.
Yeah.
And given up a lot of freedom.
You become a slave to the tool.
And you don't want to be limited. Don't limit yourself by what software engineers have told you, this is what my tool can do.
Yeah. I find myself in the same way. If I really need to get super creative, I throw down the computer and I just start sketching. I'm way more fluid mentally and way more creative when I'm actually just pen to paper, pencil to paper.
And they the digital tools steer you towards high-tech standard solutions.
Right. Yeah, it's technology steering you towards technological solutions, construction solutions.
You have a library of pieces that you're building this thing with in the computer, especially in Revit, where you're building something in 3D and you actually have to make decisions about the wall section and construction types really early on before you're maybe even ready to do that. And the wall types that you get are they're limited to the wall types that are standard ways of building things.
Yeah.
What if I want to do something more traditional? I want to build out of load-bearing masonry. I want to draw things from my own experience and my own precedents that aren't part of this preset library that you're telling me is the only possibilities. So I would just be really aware of how software companies try to steer you towards certain solutions. And that's not in your best interest. You want to have all the tools to express yourself and all your creative ideas.
Yeah.
And Revit might be one of those. Sure, 3D Studio Max and Grasshopper and Maya and all these like cool programs and AutoCAD. Yeah, great. Learn all those tools. But you got to be able to sit down with a client and they tell you their vision of a building, and you have a piece of paper and you sketch it out for them in front of their eyes and you show it to them, and
they say, yes, that's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
And that moment of connection where you've just, it's like a magic trick, where you've just won their trust and interest, and that you've got a credibility. Doesn't come by saying, okay, I think I understand. Give me 2 weeks. I'm going to go back to my office. I need to model this in a computer and then come back. And you're like, you lost an opportunity there. But most schools don't teach hand drafting and hand drawing.
It's even,
I think it's like not practical anymore. It's just in the past and nostalgia. But no. We're giving you freedom. You want freedom as a designer.
Yeah, and can you sketch fast? Can you sketch fast? Something that seems reasonable. It's like, can you sketch upside down too? Because the way your client's looking at you is from the other side, and so it would be ideally if you can sketch upside down. That's even better. That's what I do.
Takes a lot of hours practice.
Yeah, everything takes a lot of hours. And that's one of the challenges with architecture, I think, is because when you talk about becoming an expert in any given field, 10,000 hours, 5,000, however long it takes to become expert, it just takes time and repetition and experience. And there's so many things to be able to do within this field of architecture. That's why you'll never exhaust the scope of knowledge that you can acquire in the field. It will never be boring because there's too much to learn. And too many things to become proficient at. Now, when it comes to, just a person who's not an architect, an interior designer, a builder, a subcontractor, general contractor, whoever, or I'm driving down the street listening to this right now on a freeway stuck in traffic. When I'm sitting here looking out the window right now while I'm listening to this and begin to critically evaluate my own environment, what are some of the tools or books or things that I can begin to bring into myself and have some of that knowledge transferred into me so that I can just get even just slightly better.
Yeah. I would recommend looking up the Institute of Classical Architecture and Art, which is a national nonprofit. I was the president of the Utah chapter for a long time. There's chapters all over the country, wherever you are. There's going to be events in person or online, literally like almost every day, where you've got amazing designers, thinkers, authors who are talking about history and talking about different places and different styles of architecture and principles of design, from the very basic, like what is a molding, teaching the geometry of these shapes of moldings, and to really advanced things like specialized topics in different culturals, periods of history that you might, be interested in as you start to go down a certain path. And a lot of them are very inexpensive. They're just like some of them are free. A lot of these things are free. A lot of things are posted online. And it's a great community of people. There are a lot of architects involved with it, but a lot of people who are just enthusiasts and everything in between, all these architecture adjacent professions. And some of the greatest people that I know, like I've made so many lifelong friends through that community of people who are striving for more beauty in their environment. It might just be in their own house. It might just be in their own yard. Or it might be in their community, urban design. If you're looking for a book, I would either go, like, you have to read Vitruvius. That's like just a body of knowledge that you should read,
Yeah.
but it's not a very practical one, and,
Yeah.
and it's kind of hard to understand.
Yeah.
But it's like, if you want the real theory, if you want the real like meat of the meal, you got to read Vitruvius. But there are a lot of modern books that have been written that simplify things, and they're more practical or from different perspectives. A newer book, I guess it's not that new anymore, but by one of my mentors, Stephen Sams, who wrote The Future of the Past. I love that book because he's just such a clear writer and thinker, and he talks about why you look at some buildings and they feel right and other buildings they don't. And what are the principles of traditional architecture and the principles of modernist architecture, and how they're not compatible in many ways. And he talks a lot about historic preservation, and the reason that we want to preserve historic neighborhoods, it shouldn't be because they're like a relic of the past that we're trying to preserve in resin, like a dinosaur bone, but because they're great environments to live in. People love living in these places. And the more of those buildings we tear down and replace with boxes and throw away kind of ugly buildings, cookie cutter buildings, like, we're really losing something. So you're losing culture, you're losing quality of life, not just some historic artifact.
Yeah.
Which I think resonates with people as well. Because like, as soon as we start arguing that, like, we should just preserve everything from the past because it's old, then we're just freezing things in time, and that's not very
It's not useful
or creative or inspiring either. But we need to preserve things that help humans thrive and are great environments. And that's why we're starting a historic preservation program at UVU in the next few years. So yeah, I would say, like, if you're wanting to learn more about principles of design and why things look the way that they do, as an entry level thing, the Institute of Classical Architecture and Art, it's classicist.org is the website. This is a great resource. It's probably the best resource place to start you can.
That's awesome. And shameless plug for me. We will be continuing to talk about those things also, and we will continue to teach and to discuss more and more, and actually bring in some people from the Institute and just build those relationships. One of the I'm going to say it this way. There's people who listen to, I don't know, give me any, what's popular pop music these days. And then there's people who listen to Mozart. It's like one of the things that you're going to find when you go to the Institute of Classical Architecture is going to be a lot of people who look like they listen to Mozart.
Bow ties
and stuff, and it could be just by virtue of how we all dress and what we look like. It could be a turnoff to someone who's I don't know, listening to classic rock of the '70s, or driving down the street, or on the job site. And so if we can like come together and just put down the things that make us really, like, differentiate us, and say what brings us together in terms of the commonalities, I think we'll come into a much better understanding of how to apply principles that, in all honesty, when you look at everything prior to 1920, every single craftsman who was building a home, whether it was in wood, stone, brick, or whatever, knew all of the stuff that these stuffy people are talking about. And it wasn't stuffy stuff. It was just, this is just the way it's done, because it's just beautiful. And the craftsmen, the people who are in the mud making the things, understood the stuff that now appears reserved for the elites and the intellectuals. The reality is it is not. We want to make it as accessible as possible. And we are kind of relegated to using terms like you said, cookie cutter, because we don't know how else to describe it. Well, let's give you the language to be able to understand how to actually articulate stuff outside of just cookie cutter, but be able to say, man, it just doesn't look good because.
Yeah.
Doesn't look good because the proportion's wrong. Yeah, the hierarchy is missing. The order, you don't have a specific order. You have different proportioned windows. You have the grids. You have a material change in places that shouldn't. They're not tectonic. And so you listen to those words, you're like, oh, now you've just gone beyond what I can actually understand. Well, the idea with all of this is we want to still explain and help everyone understand why the world looks the way it does, and bring that accessible to everyone. To conclude this, is there any final words, Paul, that you want to mention? Say quotes, ideas that we haven't covered, shout outs to anyone.
Oh, yeah. I'll just end with a thought from my own tradition. So I grew up, I didn't grow up in Utah, but grew up in a faith, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and had connections to family here in Utah. And whatever culture you're in, whatever faith you come from, whatever your background is, I think part of human thriving and happiness is that transcendence, the pursuit of the divine part of your nature. There in our tradition, in the LDS tradition, there's this verse in one of our scriptures that says, "For Zion must increase in beauty and in holiness." And I think within my tradition, within our church, like people would just skip over that first word and then say, "Oh yeah, so our church needs to increase in holiness." Yeah, got that. And no, you missed a word there. You're increasing in beauty. What does that mean? How does that inspire you? The things in the past that people have achieved, they aren't the limit of what we're capable of. We have tools that they didn't have, and yet we're falling short of even what they could achieve in terms of creating beautiful things. So it can feel discouraging. It can feel hopeless. Like, oh, there's nothing that I can do. But wherever you are, whatever your limitations are, you can make your environment more beautiful. The ancient Greeks talked about our soul descending from a higher realm, that the material world that we see around us is like a shadow or a symbol of a higher realm, and that the purpose of beauty is to lift us and help us remember where we came from. That really resonates with my own faith. That what I'm seeing around me isn't the end. It is a type of higher forms and higher ideals. And if you can identify what those things are that are timeless, that are eternal, and connect your work with that, whether you do stained glass or architecture or design clothing or make podcasts or whatever it is, if you can infuse that with the eternal and the timeless, that it will resonate with other people, because that's us. We do all have that in our nature. So that's the challenge, I think, of whatever pursuit you're in, to not let it become just the mundane, everyday, obvious things, but find those principles underneath it that will be a foundation to aspire to greater, more beautiful, more divine, more transcendent aspects of who you are.
Love it. Thank you. You've blessed me this day. And it was here. It's Paul Monson. This is the final of 3 episodes of this podcast, so join us on the other 3. You heard it here. Yep. It is choice, not fate. Our environment looks the way it does because we are the ones who make it look the way it actually does. And we can change it. It's in our power, and we can aspire to things way above what we are currently doing right now. And it takes all of us. Architects can't do it. Builders can't do it. It actually takes everyone in every aspect, from the developers, the financiers, the architects, the interior designers, the craftsmen, the general contractors, the guy doing the crane, guy driving the dump truck. Every single person is a part of making the world a more beautiful place. So thank you for joining us on this episode. It's Clayton Vance. We'll see you next time.